Welcome everyone to our Heart to Heart episode. We're talking about consistent spiritual living. I am delighted to have Pastor Rosita Matas. I have to say that right because I don't want her to come through and beat me up. Okay, she's never going to live that down. So I'm so delighted to have her with me this month, the best month of the year, October. I don't care what anybody has said. We're not going to argue about it. That's exactly what it is. So I want to welcome you, Pastor Rosa, to our Heart Talk episode. And we're going to talk about consistent spiritual living. Go ahead and greet our audience today.
It is good to be here with you all on this heart to heart with the only one lady that would ever get me to do an interview, and that is Lady Charles. I am thankful to be here, and I don't know why the month of October means so much, but I'll go along with it just for the sake of the peace. And
Okay.
thank you for having me here, and we hope that this session is a blessing to everyone that will receive and listen today.
Yes, it is the best month because it's my birthday. So that's it. I know yours was last
Oh,
month. I'm
that's what
sorry.
it is.
You see, the thing is, Pastor Rosita, Rosalita, I was supposed to be born in September, but I stayed in London and came in October. All
Oh,
right.
see, September is my month, so
You see,
but it's all right.
yeah,
We'll
it's all
give you
right.
that.
It's
We'll
all
give you
right.
that pass. We'll let you pass.
So we're going to talk about for this month consistent spiritual living. As I was doing all my themes for the Heart to Heart session, it came up to me about consistent spiritual living. Why
Mm.
consistency? I was looking in the book of James, and it tells you not to be wavering in your faith and how we walk, not just in the physical, spiritual, but in the physical as well. Because if we're inconsistent in our physical lives, that's not good either. So tell me about your perspective on consistency. Let's talk about that first, and I'm going to get into something else.
I personally feel that in your walk with God, we know that we walk by faith and not by sight. But eventually, in the years or in your relationship with God, you still walk in faith, but your faith must become something that is solid. It must become something that is unwavering. It must become something that has you steadfast, unmovable,
Mhm.
always abounding in the work of God. And so, if you're going to be consistent in your spiritual growth, in your spiritual development, in your spiritual walking with the Lord, there
Yeah.
has to become a consistency. A consistency. The longer you have been married to Bishop Ishmael Charles, the longer my parents have been married to each other, there are just certain things that nobody can come to you about anymore in all the years that you've been married because you know him. There's a
Right.
consistency. You know his habits, you know his ups, you know his downs. You can read him like a book. You can finish his sentences. You know what he likes from what he don't like. You don't even have to be there to know what he's probably said to the other person in conversation because your relationship is no longer based on just faith and feelings. It's based on an awareness of the consistency of
Right.
operation and what I know this individual to be. So we should get to a place in our spiritual walk with God that what I know about God, I may not know what I'm facing tomorrow, but I know the God of tomorrow. I may not know what the report I'm going to receive from the
Right.
doctor is going to say, but I know the healer. I may not know where I'm going to have the money to stretch to pay the bills in my house, but I know that as long as I pay my tithe and offering, that God will come through in another magnitude to bless me. So there has to be always an element of faith. We walk by faith and not by sight, but there
Right.
also has to come into our spiritual understanding that I'm also consistent. Come hell or high waters, come good or bad, my spiritual life is solid in my belief that now unto him that is able to keep me from falling. There comes a time when we have to stop falling. There comes a time when we have to stop
I
slipping
know
and
you're gonna preach now, and
sliding.
I'm gonna stop you because you're gonna keep on
Hey,
the preacher. I,
well,
the,
you
the
help me preach
preaching.
here. Help me preach.
No, I know you can tell I got a preacher on, right? Okay.
Yes.
There's something I wanted to talk about because you did talk about steadfast and movable, which is one of my scriptures, but there's something that popped up while you were speaking,
Hmm.
talking about consistent spiritualism. The fact of, and you shared the testimony of your cancer. How did you, because I'm going to go to the physical part, how
Yes.
did you consistently continue, right? Because I'm sure there's people that have heard the story. We're going to do a little bit about it. How did you consistently walk, continuing, knowing your diagnosis? Because it's easy to say, oh, yeah, the faith, blah, 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 blah. But how did you consistently walk, knowing that this was your diagnosis?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Let me put it like this. I think it's a three part. First
Right.
of all, it is knowing God, and we've addressed that already. Secondly, it is surrounding yourself with people that have an extra measure of faith when you don't have it. It is important to choose your fellowship wisely. It is important to choose the ministry that speaks into your life. It is
Right.
important to surround yourself, because I'm human. And honestly, I'm going to try to not be emotional here, but there were many conversations that I had with Bishop Ishmael, where he encouraged me every day, where he talked to me every day, where he had a faith that I didn't have for myself. And it is important to surround yourself with people that can carry you, help
I'm
you
going to
carry
stop
the
you.
cross.
I'm going to stop you there. Why? You
Yes.
said something that got me. When you didn't have the faith, because we're talking about consent, how did you fall into that dip? Because we're going to be real, right? How did you fall into
Yes.
that dip of, I don't have the faith. I'm not doing this. And let me back up a little bit. When you were first diagnosed with this with cancer,
Hmm.
how did you see it? How did you accept? Because listen, you were not a novice in your spiritual walk. You were walking with
Right.
God. What did you do? What did you say? How did you take that? Because in the middle of your walk, everything's going good. Here comes a diagnosis. How did was you sick? What made you go to the doctor? How did it go?
First of all, well, I've been going, because I've had cancer before. And you know that anytime you have cancer and it goes into remission or it goes away, or, they always check you every 6 months. That's just the protocol. That's what happens. And so every 6 months, I always have had this trepidation of like, here we go again, and pray for me again so that this doesn't pop back up in my life again. And so there's always that challenge of faith. There's always this unexpected, and how did I react in hearing the news? Honestly, I was so numb by hearing the bad news that in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I have a choice to make. It was almost mechanical. And I will be transparent. The only thing I thought of in that moment, I didn't even think about God, and judge me if you must. I didn't think about prayer. I didn't think about healing. I naturally thought of Desmond this time, because
Right,
this time he was old enough to understand more than anything. And my heart went to God, help me cope with this
right,
enough to help him. This time, the battle wasn't just on me, it was a battle on my family. And I didn't pass the test without him and without those of you that have become my family, because I was numb. I didn't have faith, Lady Charles. When I went to England and I told Pastor Sandra, this is gonna be my last visit here. This will be my final preaching time of ever preaching in England. I had no faith that God will heal me. I had faith that He's a healer, but I had
mm-hmm.
no faith that He
That's
would
good.
heal me.
Right. And let me ask you something, because you said something I've never really heard, and I hope you don't mind. And if it's a problem, let
No,
me know.
no.
But the first time you were diagnosed, were you a Christian? I think you were a Christian then. The first, was it the same cancer or something different?
I had a tumor in my liver. I was 18 years old. The
Mm-hmm.
year was the senior year of high school, 2000. And I found out 3 months before I graduated. They went in and they removed a part of my liver out
Right.
of my body, which is, you're able to do,
Right.
and your liver will grow back in size. But at that time, I did chemo and radiation, and that was probably the most shocking in my life. I was
Right.
just 18 years old, graduating from high school. And this was back in my old Pentecostal days, Lady Charles.
Yes.
I had hair past my knees. So can you imagine
Right.
losing? all of that. I lost
Wow.
my eyebrows, my eyelashes. I got down to under 100 pounds. I wish I could get back down to that again. But so that was that was shaky and nerve-wracking. Whereas this time in my life, a year, 2 years ago, I was so numb by sickness that I had accepted it, that this would be my lot in life. As I said, I believe God is the healer, but I never believed that God would heal me.
Before you go on, because so after you got through that, your liver grew, the organ grew back, then you're on a path of, I'm good.
Yes.
Everything is good. You get married and all of that. You and all of that. Everything is good. So you never was sick with cancer between 18 until this time, right?
No,
Right.
there was another scare that had come up, and it was towards the end of my separation, divorce,
Right.
from my ex-husband, which was the reason why I moved to Florida, was so that my son, who wasn't 2 years old yet, could be with my parents in the event me and my ex had decided that I would have primary custody of Desmond, and he was staying in the military, and at the time he was overseas. And so he
Okay.
felt that if anything happens to you, Rosa, Desmond's care should be in the hands of your parents. And that's
Okay.
what brought me to Florida. I persevered. I got through that one. We survived. We made it, did treatment, did this. And then years now come back again. Boom. And this rapidly took over because of the place where it was located in my
I, I'm
intestines.
I'm gonna
Yes.
stop you again. We're gonna come to that because I'm telling you, I'm picking up because you got consistent living through sickness, consistent spirit. Now, I hope you don't mind.
No, go
The
ahead. Ask
divorce.
anything.
How did you be consistent? Because you were saved, right? I'm saying that you were
Hmm.
saved all this time. Your husband, I think, was saved, obviously. Um, how did you maintain consistent spiritual living through that divorce? You've got sick, 18. Okay, that's gone. You get married, have a child, spiritual life going. All of a
Yes.
sudden comes this inconsistency in your consistency. Did that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
Yes, ma'am.
how did you maintain the spiritual walk along with everything now that you've got your ex-husband now going
Cheating.
through? I don't need the details of that, but how did you maintain it going through
Mhm.
this as well?
Well, I'll put it like this so we can be transparent. You can ask me anything. It's my story to tell without naming him or anything like
Right,
that. But, he cheated and he cheated and he cheated until he left the church. And when he left the church, he cheated with someone else and got them pregnant. That was my breaking point, Lady Charles. I know there are some wives and some women that are able to stay with the man that gets another woman pregnant and has a child. That was my breaking point. I felt like I was losing my mind. A
right,
matter of fact, if I'm honest with you, I maybe never went to the doctor and got diagnosed, but I will look back over my life and say I was frazzled. I was shaken. I was not here cohesively mentally. I have to be honest and say, if it wasn't, again, that support is so imperative in your life, that when
right,
you can't carry yourself, you have parents, you have pastors, you have family in the church, out of the church, that will carry you. You are not an island to yourself. The
right.
reason why I made it consistently is because I had consistent coverage.
There you
I
go.
was uncovered. I know I was uncovered. I know I threw my hands in the air and I said,
Mm,
God, I'm done. Take my life. But there was a covering. And this is why pastors and leaders and
right,
our church attendants and being accountable to our leaders is so imperative, because you will come to a point in your life where you cannot cover yourself. And if you're not surrounded by the right people,
right,
if you are not surrounded and you're overwhelmed, like Noah was overwhelmed in his success, and one son left him uncovered, and the other two covered him
right,
until he recovered. And so it comes down to the covering I had over my life and over my personal self for me to recover.
right. Because you've said something that it's so important because I'm looking at the somebody who will probably view this and say, well, all of these things have happened that happened in your life and then in my life. How do I stay consistent? Because you said, okay, yeah, you've got to have the support, but in your, or shall I say, fleshly part of you, because we still
Yes.
flesh,
Yes.
or natural man, was saying, what did I do? Was there ever a time, Pastor Rosalina, that you said, what did I do to deserve this? Because I am not an outsider, or I married a unsaved man. I was in the church. I'm in church. I serve God. I serve you, God. I got cancer 18. Now, I got married to the man that I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. We had a child. Then come another inconsistent. What do you say?
I will tell you, I felt cursed. There's no other
Right,
descriptive word to describe. And I've had many times in prayer, and I've had conversations with God. Why am I cursed? I didn't say,
right,
why is this happening? I just said, why am I cursed? I feel like I'm cursed. Is there something in my bloodline? Is there, and
right.
in on my mom's side of the family, my great grandmother was a Santeria in Puerto Rico. She was a witch. And she was
Mm,
a well-known practicing witch. And the spirits that she healed people. There are people in Puerto Rico now that attribute their child because they went to her and she concocted some spell and they end up being pregnant.
right,
She's done things that people know of. She was a Santeria. She was a high up there in her coven. And so I would ask the Lord, am I paying for what my great
wow,
grandmother did? Is there a curse that is passed down through the family and it has hit me? And then I've asked God, you don't love me.
wow,
This is crazy. But and I've searched and I find, and then I've also, um, Lady Charles, I've also went to the extreme. Maybe I'm not holy enough. Maybe I'm not godly
right.
enough. Maybe I'm not.
Preach,
So,
right.
so let me cut everything out of my life. Let me cut TV, radio, books. I
Right.
went to the almost like being like an Amish Mennonite person because I want to make sure like I'm
Yeah,
not doing
right.
anything. And I was still sick. I was still afflicted. I was still struggling. I was still being cheated on. I was still being mistreated. And so I realized, okay, it's nothing on that end, then it has to be something spiritual. And
Right.
then being honest with you, saying, God, I'm not equipped for this battle. I'm not that spiritual. Half of me is natural and fleshly and
Come on. Right.
inconsistent, and I fall and I stumble. I don't pray like I should. I don't read the Bible like I should. I'm not devoted like I should. And there were things in the process of consistency that I had to acknowledge that I'm not
It's
consistent
right.
about.
So that's what I was going to draw to. Did it because you said something there? You said the thing. Then you recognize these are the things that are missing. I think that I'm consistent until adversity comes into your life and things that you thought were perfect in inverted commas start to crumble. Then God shows you, yeah, you thought everything was good. Then you recognize to yourself, I don't read the word like I should. I thought I was reading the word. I thought I was praying like I should, fasting, what have you. And because there is someone that's going to watch it and say, but I am doing everything right in my eyes. But yet, like Job, something happens. Me, and then and in the midst that you have a child. If you didn't have a child, yeah, but now you have a little baby now, a son, and now he's got to go, and he was young still. What got you to the place? Because we're going to hit the last cancer thing in a little while, but after you got pulled up from okay, you got divorced, you all of that was then how did you get yourself up from that? If that's the word I want to use, put yourself back
So
to the
first, like I said, first faith, and then who you surround yourself with. And the last thing for me would be being honest with
right.
yourself.
There you go.
Oh my Lord, there have been so many times, Lord help me not to lose it here, but so
That's
many
okay.
times where we understand that confession is good for the soul.
Right.
And looking at yourself in the mirror of God's word and saying, oh God, put a covering over my mouth for I am sinful. And being in the church all my life, which I know is your testimony as well,
Mm-hmm.
being in ministry, because my parents were ministers, yours were too, and then preaching since I was 11. I did the math the other day, September 13th, 1992. I was 11 years old as the first time I preached, and I preached from Romans chapter 1, verse 1. I'll never forget it. And the title I preached, I'm called to be a servant. And so throughout the years, though, you let 5 years go by, 10 years go
Mhm.
by. There's an arrogance that Pastor Rosa
There
has.
you go.
And don't
That's it.
nobody know that, but I
That's
know
it.
that. Oh, help me, God. You didn't know me at 15. You didn't know me at 20. You didn't know me at 25. And this is a struggle that young preachers they come through because we start being used so young. We think we have
Right.
arrived. We start being, we're given platforms that we're really not designed to stand in yet. But
Right.
because our leaders love us and our pastors love us and they love the gift that is in us, they've called me to positions and they've called me to places and to preach in audiences and on platforms that my mental ability, my emotional ability, and definitely my
Right.
spiritual ability was not correlated and matched. And so I had to go through what I went through, Lady Charles, for the salvation of my wicked soul, for the salvation of my sins of arrogance and pride. And it has been the thing that God has used to keep me humble, to keep
Yeah.
me humble. And obviously, there's still some more humbling that God has had to do with me. And so every now and then, He puts me right back in something that I have to be learned the lesson or the next lesson. Humbleness 105, humbleness,
I got
106.
you. I got you. It's so funny because your story is just like mine. I remember when I preached my first message, I think I was 16 or so forth like that. And after that, you get asked to do everything. Because I used to be in the choir, I used to play the keyboard as well. And I was asked to this, then I was asked to do some, and I asked to be a leader. And I was not mature enough because you do one, and this is what I tell people, you do one good message and they think, yeah, she's a preacher. Sometimes it
Yes.
could be true, but it doesn't mean I'm a preacher now. It means I'm a preacher. I'm going to be, and there has to mature. And that is what Bishop Charles will sometimes say when we see some of these young people in the Zoom room doing so well on the Saturday mornings and so forth, that you have to be so careful that you don't put them on a platform that they become arrogant and feel like, oh, I've arrived. Yes, I've done. That happened to me, and when I listen to you just talking about that, yep, that's exactly what happened.
And
Go.
that's inconsistency. That's
That's
my
it.
inconsistency.
Right.
I haven't been consistent in God because
Right.
I've let my ego, I've let my personality, I've let my thoughts and my ways infiltrate the consistent plan of God in my life. And so God has allowed not the perfect will, but the permissive will of God to have a part
There
in
you
my
go.
life. And it has taught me and trained me to be more mindful of the perfect will and not the permissive will.
And also, sometimes it's because of the people around you that you respect
Yes.
that don't necessarily have the spiritual insight, but because of their, I'm going to say age, for want of a better word, that you respect this leader and and they'll say to you, oh, I want you to go and lead this, or I want you to go and do this, or I want you to go and do that. But you know within yourself that you're not
Yes.
ready for it. But
No, ma'am.
because you feel that this is mother so and so or deacon, whatever the person may be, you respectfully say, yes, I'll do it. But you're not equipped. And I think that is what we have to be so careful of, because our consistency can be stopped because we want to be respectful. I'm not saying don't be respectful now, but you understand
Yes.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
You have
It it
your
it
yeah. Go
it
ahead.
requires, and I say this with respect, where you are in ministry or what God has called you to do, and where He has placed you in the body of Christ internationally, not just in a local setting, but in a world platform setting.
Right.
Um, being given this invitation to come and to speak and to this, I still need to remember this is the consistency of God
That's
who is
it.
overlooking your inconsistency, Rosa,
Right.
because I don't deserve this. I don't deserve to be asked these questions. I don't deserve to talk because I have stumbled. I have messed up. I have made mistakes. I have fallen from grace. I say this a lot. I say, I didn't need to fall on the altar. I needed the altar to fall on me. And that's a whole different crushing. We
Right.
fall into the altar, but it's a difference when the altar falls on you and breaks
Right.
you. And so I'm still not, the Apostle Paul put it like this. He said, I'm trying to apprehend that which has apprehended me.
Right.
I'm still trying to get a hold of which has gotten a hold of me. And so when you become consistent when you realize how
Mhm.
inconsistent you are.
right. And I think that's the thing for me because, like I said, when you were speaking, you just remind me of myself growing up, and as you said, grew up in church, everything. And I think sometimes in our growing up in church, not that I'm saying people shouldn't grow up in church, but we can become a little arrogant because we
Yes.
feel that we've grown up in church, we've known nothing but church, not necessarily salvation, church,
Ooh, that's a
right?
whole nother message. Come
That's a
on.
whole message right there. We can know church, but not salvation because we've been
Yes.
grown up in it. And I think that some of the time, we'll really call it religious, we become so arrogant because we've not known the sinning part. If you understand what I'm trying to say, we've not gone to the party, we've not done some of the things that some of our people that we know have done. So we have this sense of arrogance of I do, and then God blesses you and gives you the gift of speaking and preaching. Somebody recognizes you, and we can cause people to stop us. We can cause people to stop us. And so, I think one thing that you have said without being consistent means obedience and humility,
Yes.
and being honest. I think that's the key for me in the consistency is being honest with yourself and saying to yourself, I I need some help. I'm not where I think I am. And the
A
Bible says,
couple
go ahead.
a couple weeks ago, I know, we had a conversation, and I said to you, I'm a single pastor pastoring a Caribbean church,
Right,
and I wasn't raised Caribbean. I don't, I'm Puerto Rican, yes, but I was raised more American than that.
right,
And so I need a covering. I need help. I need to be able to vent to somebody that can say, no, don't view it like this, don't see it like this.
right.
That if I'm going to be consistent in my calling, I
That's
have to
it.
highlight where I'm suffering, where
There
I'm
you go.
lacking, where
That's it.
I'm not consistent, and go to the right source and say, help me stay solid, help me stay walking, help me stay productive. And one of the things that we have in the kingdom of God, whether it's the saints or it's the ministry, we have a problem with being honest.
That's it. That's it. I think that's the key for me. That's the key for me in being honest to ourselves and where we actually at. And so for me, when I talk at the top of consistent spiritual living, you've got to be honest with yourself that you're not doing the things that you say that you thought you were doing or where you're at. And just coming to church doesn't mean that you have consistent spiritual living. Reading your Bible doesn't mean you got consistent spiritual living. Praying 6 times a day don't mean you got consistent spiritual living. I think you raise it up that honesty is the key. I look at myself. I don't condemn myself every day and say, oh, you're not living right, or you know, because that's the enemy trying to tell you you never. You understand? But we have to understand because in the midst of that, you went through, because I'm looking at you at your life, because I've never had cancer, so I can't put my experience in there. Have I been through some stuff? Yes. Have I done some things wrong? Yes. But when I look at that, and then here you go, because I'm going back now. You got divorced, you're now going through your Christian, your ministries come up, you're doing that, bam. What was it, 2023, 2024, you got the diagnosis of cancer
23, yes.
again. But God, what is it now? What are you trying to show me now? In this, how did you now maintain, you said about the people around you? How do you tell people around you that are not necessarily support you that you don't want them around you? That's probably a lousy
Ooh.
question, but I'm gonna say it because there's some people that need to hear that.
Oh, wow. One thing I have learned to do is, through the years, is just this is just Pastor Rosa. This just Rosa, I should say. Um, if I don't like you, I just don't like you. And I know that's gonna sound so contrary to the spirit of the Lord inside of you,
Mm,
but I've been like that since I was a child. When I remember my parents had us line up at the back door of church, and we had to greet everybody.
right,
And if I didn't want to shake somebody's hand, I don't care if you offered me candy, money. If I didn't want to shake your hand, I just didn't want to shake your hand. I was just a moody child like that. If I liked you, I liked you. If I didn't, I didn't. Later on, I figured, God has helped me, and I realized the spirit will help you, understand
right,
and be kind, and you learn
right,
how to behave yourself. But coming into letting people know that I didn't want them around me was making sure that I had boundaries up,
Right.
making sure that, not to be offensive or
Right.
to hurt anybody's feelings, because some people are really coming from a genuine place. They
Right.
mean well and they want to do well, but it's overwhelming to
Right.
the person that is going through. I must say this real quick. The first time I lost my hair when I was 18, I have seven sisters. And two of my sisters, one of them is older and one is younger than me. Lynette is the older, Lucy is the younger. And Lynette, she just couldn't take the bald. She couldn't see me bald. Every time she saw it, she would just fall into a basket case. So if she was coming to visit me at the hospital or if I was home, she would knock on the door and say, Rosa, are you? And I knew that was for
Yeah.
me to cover because
Oh.
she just couldn't take it. But that Lucy was the quite opposite. Lucy would ride on my head and draw on my head, and
Mm.
she'd take me to the store with her. And nowadays, a bald headed woman now, people don't look at that much, but
Right.
a bald headed woman 20 something years ago, everybody would stop and stare. And my sister Lucy would be like, what are you looking at? Why are you staring? She was ready to fight. She would go from 1 to 100 in the matter. And
Right.
so I had to learn that everybody has their reaction to what you're
Right.
going through, but I need to be able to cope with your reaction. And in some moments I can't, so I'd say nothing to nobody because I'm still
Right.
dealing with it internally. And then little by little I will let people in as I am able to handle
Right.
how they're going to react. But if I can't handle how you're going to react, I silently leave you in the dark because I'm not capable emotionally, mentally, and spiritually to handle what you're going to do. So I've had to be very precise and stick to
Yes.
my boundaries.
And I think that goes to the scripture that you quoted that I was going to quote to the end in First Corinthians 15 and 58, that it says, be steadfast,
Yes.
unmovable. Because people, there's a lot of persons that take me because you know me, you know me when I'm going to say my good state because I've not always been in this state. I have always been a serious child. My sister is more of the jovial, talkative person. I got more talkative because I went into nursing and I had to stick up
Hmm.
for myself with a lot of things. But I was always the serious type, and I've always been known to be, oh, she's too serious. She doesn't, you know. I just tell people I just don't see gray. I see black and white. I'm sorry, I just can't see gray in a spiritual,
Right.
right? But then you 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 have to be steadfast. Consistency is being steadfast, unmovable in your beliefs, in what you know is correct, and without hurting people, without because I don't go to every assignment. I've got to the place where I said, God, just don't let them invite me, because I don't think just because people invite you to go to church doesn't mean that you're the person to be there to that
Yes,
assignment.
ma'am.
Some people
Yes,
will
ma'am.
want you because they think, oh yeah, she's gonna blow down the
She's gonna
place,
bring the crowd.
but
Yeah.
right, right, but that's not where God wants you to be, and you have to be willing to say thank you very much, but
And I had to learn that
yeah,
20 years ago, because and people think, you have a heavy preaching assignment now. That's periodically that will hit you according to the
right,
schedule. But I do a lot of things in my home church. I'm very busy at my home church because that's where God has planted me to
right,
be. You have seasons where you're out, but then there's a lot of
right.
it where you're home. And so I had to learn not to accept, again, boundaries, being aware
Mhm.
of where God wants you to be above all else.
Right. And so that's the key for me, that the consistency of con consistent spiritual living is honesty that we talked about, obedience, even when you don't understand it, and also expecting to see things that happen, because Paul put it as a thorn in his flesh. That's what he
Yes.
said. I've asked God 3 times, take it away from me. Then I realized it was to keep me humble, because
Yes.
who was more arrogant than Paul? Because that's what he did in his life when he was Saul. He was going out persecuting and thought he was, oh, I'm doing God's will. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And God humbled him on the ground, blinded him. I said, no, you're going to be persecuted. And he had to stay consistent in his walk with God in spite of everything that he went through. And the reason why I wanted to talk about your experience, Pastor Rosa, was because there are people that are young people, men, women, whoever, pastors even, going through ups and downs in their ministries? How do they be consistent when you look like everybody's gone? People are not going the way that, how do you stay consistent in that? Talk a little bit about, we're going to wrap it up, but talk a little bit, because you're a pastor also. How do you stay consistent when people come in, going, and you're talking with you and then they're gone? Talk a little bit about that for me, please.
There, to me, the scripture that comes to mind for that is to remember now unto him. Now unto him. This
Right.
work is never our work. This work isn't it has nothing to do with us. He uses us to get his work done. But
Right.
when our time is done, we fade, we walk left, and someone else takes the role. And so I keep reminding myself of that I am here on assignment, and
That's
my
it.
assignment has an expiration date, whether that is when the Lord calls us all home to the other side, or that's a personal rapture of myself, or he just moves me on in another area of ministry. You must be aware that your assignment comes with an expiration
That's
date,
good. That's good.
and
That's good.
keep that foremost in your mind. Secondly, we don't own the church. We
That's
are
it.
the carers for the church, but we don't own the church. And we have too many pastors, too many leaders. We are using the church as our personal inheritance. I built it, so I'm going to pass it to my child. I'm going to pass it to my nephew. I'm going to pass it to
Right.
my niece.
That's
Now,
it.
and I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because if that's what God is calling that niece, that nephew, that child, that son, that daughter to do, then you must hand it on to them if that's who's next. But at the same time, we have also hurt the church because we're treating it like it's a personal inheritance. We're
Right.
treating it like it's my legacy. No,
Right.
it's God's gospel. And that's what we have to remember. I'm not here to leave a legacy. I'm here to leave a gospel. I'm here to make sure that
Right.
somebody knows how to run with Jesus.
And that's and also that comes with people that you have in your church that decide to leave, because you've got
Yes.
to be consistent in that. Because as I was talking to, with the persons that come and you think they're there for the whole part of your ministry, all of a sudden they get up and they
They're
leave.
gone.
And
They're gone.
so speak to someone quickly on that part. The
Also,
seasonal.
season, the,
Right.
the enemy likes to get us into cycles, and it's
Right.
like being in a washer machine or a dryer. You program your dryer, now you program your machine, and you can walk away, and it does what you wanted to do. It will not deviate. It will
Right.
not change and switch tracks on you because you programmed it that way. It's a cycle. God has called us to live in seasons, not cycles. And
That's
and
it.
the children of Israel, when they were in the wilderness, they got stuck in cycle. It just
Right.
around and around, around and around, around. They uprooted and they went around. They uprooted and they went around. And God wanted them to live in his seasons. And pastors and leaders and ministries that are changing, or people are leaving, or people are coming, or you're having to, move one leader to another place, or give another
Right.
person another chance to grow in God. And you've been running this ministry for 5 years now, but we need new development, new growth.
Right.
That's nothing against you, but this is just, we got to get out of cycles and get into seasons.
That's it. And I think that's and consistently, because something that came to seasons are consistent.
Yes. And they
It's
bring
spring, summer,
consistent growth.
right? And they've been consistent, because there's sometimes when you've got to cut, there's sometimes when you got to plant, there's sometimes you got to water, sometimes you got to enjoy, sometimes you got to shed and prune and whatever. But that's a
And sometimes as
consistency,
pastors, when we're seeing people go, it hurts. And,
right?
and sometimes it's the season has come. They must. And then there are
Right.
other seasons where you never get an answer to why they left. It's nothing you've done. It's nothing the church done. You're just gone. But you
Right.
have to remember that I'm planted here, and this won't always be like this.
That's it.
There will be another season to come. So we might lose 10 people, but there's a season coming where we're going to gain 20.
That's it. That's the thing. That's the key for me. That's the key. So you've been watching Heart to Heart. I've just had a conversation with Pastor Rose Lena Matos. We've been talking about consistent spiritual living. I know that you've been blessed, but remember what she said. Honesty, obedience is the key to consistent spiritual living. Sometimes you've got to cut off the people around you to have a consistent spiritual living. Sometimes somebody might be watching and saying, how am I going to continue on? Before we're going to close, Pastor, say one last thing to somebody, just feel like I've done everything right, but I just don't feel consistent. Can you just share with someone?
The main thing to remember in consistent spiritual living is your God is consistent. The partnership that will make your spiritual walk with God consistent is always remember He is consistent. Circumstances and life and seasons and people coming and people going, that's going to bring up and downs. But there's a song that says He's the God of the hills and the valleys. God is what stays consistent. And as long as you have Him as your focal point, as your covering, as your armor, as your reason
Right.
to get up and face the day, you
Yes.
will be consistent in Him. God bless
Amen.
you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Pastor Rosa. I'm sorry, I said Rosalina, Rosa. Thank you so much. You have been watching Heart to Heart. We've been talking about consistent spiritual living. Join us again next month. Why? She's coming back and we're going to talk about something just a little bit different. God bless you. Enjoy as you view this. God bless.
God bless. God bless you.